Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
I'm gonna make you co-host as well, Rachel, if you don't mind, and just if you can help me bring
I
people
ne-
in.
Sure, I never mind.
Thank you, appreciate it.
If someone's off mute, do you want me to mute them if they're not talking?
If they're as long as they're not making a bunch of noise, like I don't care,
Okay.
because maybe they were about to say something or waiting for a spot to jump in or something.
Okay.
A good question, Ricky. Awesome. All right. Well, let's get this show on the road. Um, okay. All right. So we don't have a guest speaker today. It's actually gonna be tomorrow. So I know the calendar was a little messed up there, but he couldn't come on Thursday, so we can come on tomorrow. So we're gonna have David Hernandez. Who knows Dave? Just out of curiosity. Jeff, you know Dave, don't you?
Yeah, met him a
Yeah.
few times. Yes.
And Kaden, you know who Dave is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he's gonna jump on. He's a self-proclaimed um, negotiation magician, is what he said. So I was like, yeah, I like that a lot. So yeah, me and Dave have done some deals together. He is a wholesaler. So and that's what he does. That's what he does. That's his. He's a full time wholesaler. He's had like almost like mini franchises across the nation. So he's done a lot of cool stuff. Closed a lot of deals, and he's very good at helping people see like what we're trying to sell. He gets a lot of creative financing deals. In fact, he's we might be working on the deal together for the subject too that he's got. So that's kind of cool too. So yeah, a lot of fun stuff. I'm excited for him to come on. And this is something that he said he wouldn't normally do this. People ask him to come in and share some knowledge or do whatever. But because we have a really good relationship, he's like, yeah, for you, Jared, 100%. Like, yeah, that's right. Something awesome like that. I'm just kidding. No, no, he's a good guy, and that's what happens when you're providing value and trying to help other people, and like there's I don't want it's gonna sound it's probably gonna sound bad, but I'm okay with it. Like it, I like helping people because I know it's gonna come back to me one way or another. So when I do help people, there's definitely selfish reasons, and it's not. But I believe in karma, so it's like coming back eventually. So what maybe not through this avenue, but through a different one. You know what I mean? But a good friend of mine, she gave my number to someone else, and we're working on a deal right now together, and we got like two more down in the pipeline too, because of relationships. So relationships are huge, guys. Like building and cultivating those type of relationships, and that doesn't happen necessarily overnight. You can get some quick ones sometimes, right? Just go into a network event and you just met this guy, and it's like, oh, awesome, yeah, yeah, you need help with something. I have the solution over here, or yeah, I don't mind doing something like that, or whatever it is, right? You can find those things quickly, but it's really what you get, what you put into it. That's huge. You get what you put into it, like which is true for everything. As I'm dropping stuff. Um, okay, but I did want to open it up to like for today, questions. People's having challenges. I know someone. Well, Melissa texted me yesterday, and I didn't see her on here. Darn it! It says she was having a hard time like building a list. She has Renatus iOS, but she's just not quite too sure on how to pull a list or whatnot. So I was hoping she was on here. We can kind of talk about that a little bit. But is there anything in particular you guys need help with, or maybe do you have a lead, or do you we can make some we can talk to your leads right now. Like let's do some maze. But go ahead, Jeff. It seems like you have
Yeah.
something.
Just you touch on it very often regarding seller financing.
Mhm.
I mean, I I know what it is. I've heard how how to talk to it, talk about it to a seller.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I've just never been able to wrap my head around just having just a basic idea of what the numbers look like, versus fix and flip.
Yeah.
Like, how can I offer more? How does that benefit them? How can I do that like in
Hmm.
a 6 month term flip?
Yeah.
Like I just never been able to wrap my head around the numbers.
No, I think that's a great question. And in fact, I had Heather ask me like almost very similar question yesterday, matter of fact. So that's kind of that's fun. They're interesting, yeah, like very similar questions. So let's take a look at that. Okay. Uh so how can we offer more? Like where's the deal if they're doing solar financing, right? So for an example, if and long term it's a lot easier if it's like 3+ years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. um it's easier to show them the value. Why would they want to do creative financing, like the sellers and the numbers? I mean, because even like when I'm buying something with creative financing and I'll offer more. Sometimes I don't offer more. Sometimes my offer price is the same as my cash offer, or maybe it's like $10,000 or $20,000 more than what my cash offer is. But what I really focus on is like the interest that they're getting on top of what they're, if there is any like price increase, if that makes sense. So let's just here. Let me do this. Let me pull up. I can't minimize.
And and one of the reasons I ask is it's like, hey, looking at a house, just right off the bat with the conversation, it's like I mean, that's not a flip. You can't flip that property, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you and others will just say like, oh, well, what else about financing? Like, okay, how does that?
How does that make
That's
it a deal? Yeah.
great. Like, yeah, that make like the one we found on Facebook, a few weeks ago, and I would look at that and be like, no, but very surface level. But
Mm-hmm.
then we looked at it and talked about seller financing. I'm like, okay, awesome. I don't know how to think of that as a solution, as a
Right.
possible deal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also if I could add to that, like how to
Yeah.
talk to the realtor about it. I know that you also did that the other day, and I have too. I was gonna call in today that are actually MLS listings, and they're kind of gutted on the inside, and pretty so lower prices. But so just to add that to what Jeff is asking,
Yeah.
I'm asking about that too.
No, great question. Great questions, I should say. So, like, how does seller financing make deals work when it didn't work before? How does the numbers work? And like, as far as how do you increase the value if it's already maybe it's a tighter deal already? Um, and how do we speak to agents about creative financing? Is that is that in a nutshell kind of the questions?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
If I don't understand it, then I can't explain it to someone.
You're no, that's perfectly understandable, right? So let's just say we're going to buy a $500,000 house. Okay. Like that's the purchase price. Uh, and and by the way, you can an amortization calculator, a balloon payment calculator. There you can, if you don't have one, you can literally go on your phone, type in the search in your app store of amortization calculator, balloon payment calculator. There's a gazillion. You can literally just go and Google a bunch of there's a bunch of free calculators you can just pop in. A lot of them like want your information, like just don't do those ones. But there's some that's just you click in it and it's there. Um, and also in Excel, like when I just do new, uh, uh, I create a new sheet and then it's under templates, I just put in like amortization, and then it has like loan amortization, balloon payment calculator. So I use balloon payments calculator most of the time. But so there's no, the calculator itself is easy to find. You got to do a little bit of looking. That's it. But your regular calculator is not going to cut it because of shenanigans. That's all I can say to that. If you don't know what that shenanigans I'm talking about, then watch your velocity banking class. Okay. So let's just say it's a longer term. Like, so there's potential being a good rental. Okay. Um, with when I'm looking at creative financing and the beauty of using the calculators, I I will sit there in front of the seller and play with the numbers on my calculator and on my and write things down. Sometimes, most of the time, I already kind of know what it is, but even now, I'll still just take a little time and just play with the play with the numbers a little bit so it makes sense. So for an example, on a rental, let's just say if it's 500,000. If I went traditionally, what's the interest rate now? What, 6-7% right now, give or take? Um, at 7% interest, like the payments are 3,300. That's his principal and interest. Not talking about principal and interest. And normally a mortgage has principal, interest, and what? What else does it have? T
Taxes.
Taxes and
Tax and
insurance.
insurance.
taxes, insurance, exactly. So taxes, insurance, penny, and you go finding out what the taxes are super easy. Going to the county records or going to Zillow will have that, or Redfin will just have it there for the most part. Sometimes it doesn't, but 99% of the time it does. So you can get the tax information, divide that by 12, done, and then depending on the insurance, that could be anywhere from 2,100 to 3,000 depending on the house, right? So, anyways, but just figuring out, but this is a good basis, right? Because the taxes and insurance aren't really going to change. What's going to change is here, right? So if I'm looking at over a longer term and like traditional financing is not going to work, if the rent's in that area for $500,000 house, if it's not going to be over $3,000, right? It's just not. It's probably going to be like 2,500, maybe 2,600 if it's a really nice house, depending on the area. And so, like when I'm looking at something like this, and I just start playing with the numbers. So maybe if it's like, what if the interest rate was only 4% or 3.1% or something like that? What does that turn into? So 2,100 instead of, and then what if I did $10,000 more? It doesn't necessarily jump up the payments too much. And so this, and again, ignoring the fact of principal or of taxes, insurance, like this would potentially cash flow like $400 if it was like 2,600 or 2,700 as the actual rent. So even though I'm paying more because I'm playing with the numbers a little bit, I can see what we can offer with creative financing so that the payments are low enough where it'll cash flow. Does that make sense, Jeff, on that? So it's just really just looking at, because most of the time sellers don't really, most of them are not like in fine tune like what's a good interest rate or something like that, right? A lot of times they don't mention interest rate or just say you're going to charge me interest, and then that's how it's gonna work. Another thing too is like if my cash offer was 500 and they're looking to get 550 or whatever, I can say something like, well, what if I was able to get you like 580,000? Well, how do we do that? Because over the next 5 years, I'm paying 3.1% interest and I'm buying it at 310, but I'm paying over $74,000 in interest. So, and I just explained it to him. So here's what's going to happen. Or yeah, so I can get almost to 585. I know you're asking. I know my cash offer was 500, and you're hoping to get 550. But I mean, there is a way where I can get you all the way up to 585 if you're open to that conversation. And so they give me I asked. I'm asking permission to proceed. Are you open to that type of conversation? Like, oh, yeah, absolutely. They always say yes. How would you do that? Why don't you? Yeah, I'll take it. Like, okay, great. Well, this is how it works, because I got to get a loan. I have to pay people money regardless, because I don't have $500,000 in my back pocket, right? I got to pay interest to somebody, and And to be honest, instead of paying it to some banker, to some big time investor, I'd rather pay it to someone like you. And so what we would do is I would buy the property a little bit higher than my cash offer was, but I'd be making payments to you on a monthly basis. And because you're going to charge me interest over the course of the next 5 years, you're going to be getting an additional $74,000, which totals everything to 584,000, or almost 585,000.
Okay, a light bulb just went on.
Yeah,
It's effectively it's the interest that is making the offer higher over
yes.
time.
That's the biggest part. Yes. So the
Gotcha.
interest rate is the biggest. That's how the offer gets super high, right? Or a lot higher than what they're expecting. Especially going like over if it's like the 30-year loan, even at 3.10% interest rate, which is like super cheap, right? If it was like they're gonna be getting almost $800,000 for the property. Like I'm gonna pay an additional 274,000 over the next 30 years. A lot of times people don't necessarily like the idea of getting paid. They're like they want it shorter sometimes. So like, yeah, we'll do it. Do a balloon payment, and then I put in my calculator and of the 10 like, and I'll tell them about the payments. So you'll be getting 2,100 a month, assuming it's free and clear. We're not doing wraparound or anything.
Right.
And I asked him, so let me ask you this: how long would you like to receive those payments? Well, I mean, I would love to get $2,000 every single month okay, so like for the next like 30 years, would that work? And their age does kind of matter
Mhm.
because I was just in a conversation last week with someone and we're talking about creative financing and I was talking about a 5-year balloon and she's like, I don't know, I don't think I'll be alive then. Can we do something shorter? I'm like, okay, 3 year. So I mean, it's that does happen. But on that note, this is just more of a little nugget. Um, One thing I would say, like, well, yeah, I mean, heaven forbid you you, you do pass on, you don't make the 5 years. Uh, would you like that your kids were able to get a consistent revenue stream for the foreseeable future? That they're always going to get that consistent funds coming in? Well, yeah, that'd be great. Like, I mean, if you do your estate planning well enough, you can have them inherit this loan, so they're getting the payments, and since it's if at the case that when you move on, they're the ones that receive that payment. So sometimes that's just something you can kind of throw in, like, yeah, well, I'm not going
Yeah.
to live until the next 10 years. Well, which is super, and having conversations where I'm like, how long do you think you're going to live? That's you don't really want to say exactly like that, but yeah. I still struggle with that. If it's not a big deal, it doesn't need to be a big deal, but in my head, I don't know why. Anyways, so
And this is for a rental, correct?
this would be like,
If
yeah, for longer term is
that
rental.
long, yeah, if it's that long, it's gonna be a rental. Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Now, if we're talking for like a flip, okay, awesome, cool. So let's just look at a flip. So whenever I do seller finance, I won't do anything smaller than a year. I know a lot of times we plan for like 6 months. Well, I mean, I guess I have done smaller than a year, but that was for different scenarios. But for the on in as a general rule, at least a year, because if something happens in 6 months and I need more time, maybe the market crashes or whatever, I need to refi or do whatever to make things right. But for as a secondary exit strategy, I want the extra time. Um, so what I'll do is, so for example, let's just say the 500,000 mark, right? They're wanting to get 500,000. Uh, and if we're charging, so the payments we don't really care about, we'll just say 5% interest, okay? Um, they're going to get an additional 25,000 over the next year as far as the interest rate goes. And so, and first, when you think about it, so let's bust out the regular calculator here. At 500,000, what's the hard money cost at that, for example? So it's for 6 months.
12%.
Yeah, usually, so it's 2%. is like the origination fee. So 2 and 12 usually, or they'll say a 3 and 12 or 3 and 10 or whatever, 2 and 10. So the first number, like the points, is like just the cost to make the loan, and then it's 12. You typically 12% interest rate is what the hard money costs. So if you 2%, so basically 1% for every month. We're planning for 6 months, and then plus another 2%. Another 2% on top of that. So if you times it by 8%, then you'll actually get what the 6-month cost will be. Did I make that more complicated than it needed to be? Yeah, I did. So let's do the, so 500,000. And then we're gonna, 2% of that is what? So 2%, because that's how to start oh my God. You have to be smarter than the calculator, people. 2% of that is $10,000. Okay. And then that's just the interest. That's just to get the loan. And this is like, we're kind of playing in fantasy land as far as like they're lending 100%, which they wouldn't. But we're just gonna, for this case, okay. So $10,000, and then it can be additional for 6 months at an annualized 12% interest rate. What's half of 12%? 6, right? So if we sell it at the 6-month mark, it's gonna be 6%. So then we have 500,000 times 6%. That's another 30,000. So 40,000. We're gonna pay $40,000 in interest to do this deal. Okay. Now back to here. So now we know, and we know that at 500,000, even paying the 40,000 makes sense. Okay, in this make believe story, or in this scenario. So we said 40 or 50. What was that again? Wait. Yeah, 40. Okay. So it's the 30 then plus the 10. So 40K in interest with hard money loans. If I'm paying 5% interest, for a year, the interest would be 25,000, right? But if I actually sell it in 6 months, it's actually only 12,500. So I'm saving almost 30 grand by doing seller financing instead of buying the property on with the hard money lender. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah,
So,
that's cool.
sorry, Jared. As soon as you got to that 12,500, I kind of got lost. Could you
Okay.
explain
Yep.
that part again?
The 12,500. So we have, sorry, I was doing comparison, right? So we're paying $40,000 in total with the hard money. Now, if we're going to look at the other side of seller financing, because we're using this as an example, this is even a higher purchase price. So 510 is our purchase price to creative financing. They're going to charge us 5% interest. There's no resolution points, nothing like that at all. And it's for 1 year. This is how the calculator set up. I don't know if I can do half a year. Will it do that? Oh, it will. Nice. Okay. And we're planning to do it in 6 months, right? So that's so we're paying $12,711.43 of interest during the 6 months. So instead of paying 40,000, we're paying 12,711. Did that make?
Yeah, guys. So, and this is still in the concept of doing a fix and flip versus,
Yes.
but instead of taking out the hard money lending, just doing a 6-month seller finance.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So this is like for seller financing that for fix and flip, right? Yeah. So in that scenario, one, you're gonna be like, so we're making like almost 30 grand more. Okay, we're just rounded up for easy numbers. And in that scenario, we're still paying 10,000 more. So at that 20,000 more. So we could technically increase our offer by 20,000, and the numbers wouldn't. Oopsie. That's I'll sell my house for that price. For additional 10,000, right? And it only increase what the interest we're paying by a couple $100. over the course of the loan. So you could probably even go as high as like 30,000, and it doesn't. You're almost at this point where we're paying about the same as if we bought it at 500, but in cash, but using hard money. So this one we're paying them a little bit 30. We're probably paying $3,000 more than the hard money in this scenario, but okay.
Thank you. That that is so cool.
Yeah.
Explains so much. The the part that I wasn't clear on is, I mean, we're actually doing the flip for 6 months, but at the beginning of that example, you said something about we set up the seller financing for 12. Like, did I
Mm-hmm. So
miss something?
I would pitch seller financing if I was a flip, and maybe they're really, they don't want to do seller financing for a long time, but could be maybe they're kind of iffy. I would first originally pitch seller financing for 3 to 5 years, if I'm getting a little bit of that feel, but then I back down to a year at that point. And the thing is this is like, even if it is a great flip, I would still pitch it I would still try to get seller financing for 5 years, because it gives, if you're wholesaling it, you don't know what the end buyer may want or not. So them having an option like, great, yeah, I can flip this in 6 months. Okay, you just paid off your loan 4.5 years sooner. Awesome. Versus, like, oh man, I really was hoping to get this as a rental, but I can't refi. So you're gonna have more. You're gonna widen the more flexible your deal is, the bigger of your buyer pool are gonna be more interested in it. Because I've had people that just wanted to flip it, and they got they took over and they bought this property that was subject to, and it was good for the next 25 years, but they just wanted the financing for 6 months.
And
They.
so
Mhm.
so the numbers don't change by the fact that they finished the deal in 6 months versus 5 years.
Well, as far as like well, it does change because it
For
changes
for
what
the
they're
seller.
doing.
I
Yeah.
guess for the
Oh, for the
seller.
so it does change. It does change for the seller, and that's
Okay.
something I talk about too, right? So I'll say, like, we're talking about seller financing, and so let's just say it is for 5 years, right? Um, and I'll let them know, like, so if after the end during the 5 years we're paying almost $130,000 in interest, $127,000 interest if it was 5 years. That's that big difference from uh 127 versus 13,000. That's a pretty big difference, right? Um, what I'll say, so as we're pitching like for 5 years, it really kind of depends on what their pain point was, what was like their intrigue, what problems does this solve for them on having it for longer term, or just because they wanted a higher price or whatnot. And so, and I'll just be open with them and transparent. Like, yeah, there's, as we progress, we're gonna go for, yeah. So assuming we go through this whole loan, we put a renter in here, and we have it for 5 years, the interest we're paying you is almost $130,000 when you look at this, right? And I mean, there is a chance where maybe the market goes crazy, or the interest rates is totally drop, and it's like, I gotta refinance this thing, or someone offers me $1 million for this property in 6 months. Well, I mean, I'm probably gonna sell it because that'd be silly not to. And so I'd let them know, like, there's a possibility where, hey, listen, because I don't necessarily know what the buyer is going to do, right? And if they want more information about it, or if they ask questions later on, like, yeah, we can, when I know the buyer, like, I can make sure they're in the loop of kind of what the plan is. If that makes sense, so they're not like, feel like Jared promised me 130,000 and gave me 12. I mean, so yeah, we don't want that, right? But we want to make sure that there's like that. If assuming we go past, and I use the words assuming, estimated, you don't want to promise, like, especially with interest, and promising that you're gonna, if it's contingent on the time and you're not promising the time, then that's the case, right? One thing I do offer sometimes, if it's like a really clincher, like they really want to get the 130,000 over the next 5 years. They don't want me to sell it in 2 years, in a year, or whatever. And so what I'll sometimes what we'll do to close the deal is like, and I'm getting really in depth here, but early payment penalty fees. So if I pay off the loan, or the owner pays off the loan within the first 6 months, a year, they have to pay additional $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it may be. And then as the years go on, I typically just reduce that early payment penalty or make it zero altogether. But that's in a scenario where it makes more sense. Like if it's like in a scenario where it's like, yeah, I want to keep this long term. Or that's a scenario where even if they sold it and they had to pay that fee, it still makes sense as a deal. So instead of making 50,000, they're making 40,000. The flipper's still happy with that. Or this makes more sense as a long-term play. Then it's like, yeah, sure. If you want to give you more assurance that you're going to get the 127, if we do end up selling, because like I say, things can happen, right? I don't want to give. I'm not. This is my plan. Sometimes we go into a project with a certain plan and then we have to change it. But if it gives you more security, why don't I just put an early payment penalty fee on this, and then with these terms and whatnot.
Basically, with this type of seller financing, we explain the benefits using the calculator to the seller so they understand they're getting more than what they are actually asking for. And
Yeah.
what we are basically essentially getting is whatever terms we're getting, basically a lower interest loan, so that we hold on to the property until we can actually sell it, but yet we're still paying the interest through the seller financing deal. That's basically it, right?
Well, what do you mean by I was with you until the last little bit? So until as a flipper, you're saying, right? That's
Yeah,
what
yeah. Sorry, yeah.
payments,
If I was
yes.
gonna flip it, or if I, yeah, like, yeah. I guess for fix and flip, not for a long-term hold. That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it and if this deal really doesn't, if like maybe the purchase or the resale, the ARV and all that stuff just doesn't make sense for maybe $2,800 is not counting insurance or taxes. Like there's not a ton of rents out here there's some places, but not for any houses that you're buying for 500,000. There's no rents out here that's going to be higher than the 3,000. So you're writing a check every month if this is a long-term play, for example, because the payments are $2,800. So this wouldn't make sense for a long-term play, right? So I would try to pitch it for a shorter time seller friend. I kind of know it's going to be it only makes sense for a flip, right? So it really, a lot of it depends on what the scenario, what makes sense from the deal, and you want to think of like not just what you'd want to do with the deal, what would your buyers want to do? How can you structure it in a way where more people will be attracted to it than just that one niche guy that wants a deal just like this, right? Because I've sold deals like to people like that where it's like no one else wanted it. He's the only one that wanted this thing, but it was like the perfect deal ever for this guy. You know what I mean? Which is if when you're in those type of deals, it's hard to find that one investor, right? Does that make sense? But yeah, there's a whole other even with so let's just say for example, I don't want to go too complicated. This is fun. Okay, I'm gonna go into this is cool stuff, guys. Okay, all right. Let me show you some. Want to know some really cool stuff? Let's just say that we buy the property for 530, 5% interest, or we're gonna 4% interest. This could even be a subject to same scenario that wouldn't change if it's seller financing subject to. Okay, payments 2,500. We're just gonna ignore just for example purposes the taxes insurance because it doesn't necessarily change. So let's say I'm gonna do this for we get it under for 5 years, and they really want the 100,000. Like that was like, you know what? Because I wanted 600, but you're only offering me 530. But doing it this way over 5 years, I'm gonna get 631. Sounds good. Great. So they really want. So we put in some early penalty fees on it. So I don't want to pay it off early. Okay. We buy it. Let's just say like we're not even like I'm doing the deal. Let's just say I'm doing it. So we buy it 530, negotiated, no down payment because we're awesome like that. by the way, I don't bring up down payments until they do. Because if I can get a deal with no down payment, last season, you guys saw me had that exact conversation with the seller, and we negotiated a deal at 3.5% with no down payment. Y'all saw me do it. I just didn't mention down payment at all. Now, when his son got involved, then we had to do down payment. That's a whole other story. But yeah, but initially, yeah, that's he was totally fine with it. Okay. So let's just say we do the flip, right? So we fix it up, as a hoarder house, whatever, and we're gonna flip it, sell it for 700,000, right? This is where my calculator comes in. Now let's talk about this. They want the $100,000, and I want to be a man of my words as best as I possibly can. And so, and they have early penalty fees, and so I don't want to pay the early penalty fees. So, what if we sold the property on seller financing and do a wraparound? This is what's called a sandwich. Sandwich, wraparound, same thing. Back in the day, we called it a Lambert, because Nate Lambert would be you'd always be talking about stuff like this. So for like years, I literally thought like the wraparounds and stuff was called the Lambert. Anyways, I told them, if you guys know Nate Lambert, then you know what I'm talking about. I told Nate that story. He just freaking laughed. He had no idea. We were all saying, yeah, I'm doing a Lambert. Oh, that's awesome. Anyways, so okay. Let's see how this. Now we have this property. Okay, we with the loan is 530. We don't want to sell it. So what we can do, if the ARV, we're going to sell it for 700,000, right? We can sell it on seller financing. So we're going to do a wraparound. So the down payment that you're requiring could be anywhere from 10 to 20%, which would be hopefully enough to, so let's just say 20%, right? Oh, times. So 140,000 down would be the down payment. So if someone's like buying a property like that, 700,000, and like, well, who would do that? Why would they do that? You're finding people like myself, or maybe people with questionable immigrant status. When I say myself, my AGI last year, my gross adjusted income, what the government says I earned was 19,000. I made a lot more than that. Okay, so they and I wasn't hiding anything from the government, by the way. Like the strategies we learned from Renata, so you know what I'm saying. But as far as the government's concerned, I just make, if I go to the bank and try to get a loan for a house, like, dude, you don't make any money. I'm like, well, I do okay. That's what, because that's what the taxes say. I don't make any money. I make 19,000. Nothing. And so that's why some people will end up on purpose pay more taxes so they can show that they're making higher income, as far as taxable income, I should say. Anyways, that's not here. So people like me, that I don't want to give the government more money just so I can give the banks more money. That doesn't make any sense for me. So if I want to buy a house, I'm going to buy it in seller financing. And so I'm a business owner, $140,000. And again, this is 20%, but this is kind of it's a little bit higher. 10%, 70,000, 100,000, even then it's still fine, right? So you're paying back your basically whoever you got from the for the rehab costs. Like it's definitely gonna be under 100,000, right? Assuming so. So you pay back and then plus whatever interest rate or equity points, whatever they're getting back. So someone comes in and they're buying the house, they're putting down 140,000. Actually, want to minus it then. So they're doing 140 down. So they're doing a loan of 560,000. You guys with me so far? This is after we do the flip. We already bought it. So we have a loan of 160,000. And oh, come on. Over here. Okay. Bear with me. I got too many windows up. Okay. Now, what does that look like? Because right now we have a loan for 30. Our payments are 2,500 2,500. We're just gonna round it up. So 2,500 is our current payments, principal, interest. And this guy's getting a loan for the 560, but we're not charging 4%. We're gonna charge like 6%. So his principal interest payments is 3,357.
So Jared, you're talking about we've done the transaction. Now we are seller financing it to an end buyer. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Absolutely. No. Yeah, I'm glad you asked it because someone else was thinking the exact same thing. So I'm glad you did. So what does that mean? So we just got $147,000 back. So our rehab costs are paid back. In this scenario, the down payment was either next to nothing or zero. So it's going to pay back for the down payment if we put into it, and then money in pocket. This is massive income with cash flow. Then we're paying 337 as far as payments go. That's what the guy's paying, the seller or the buyer, the end buyer. So 350. Let's put 350. Okay. Wait, what am I? That's not even right. What am I doing? 3,350. There we go. Minus 2,500 is. So now we just got ourselves a cash flow of $850 a month, plus whatever plus 140,000 to start with. So if it used your own money for the rehab, then you just got that back. We use credit cards or whatever. Awesome. You pay back your partner, or maybe part of the partnership is like, yeah, we're going to sell it in seller financing. You're going to get X% of the whatever the payments would be or whatever, right? You can structure however you want to structure, but basically you got a massive check of 140,000 at closing, and now you're getting 850. Now let's just say for this guy, because there's a balloon payment in because we took 6 months to do it. In 4.5 years, there's a balloon payment. So we're gonna offer him. We're gonna not offer him. We're gonna give the loan that we have is gonna be in 4 years. In 4 years, he's gonna have that balloon payment. So then that gives us, in case he doesn't refi or you got to take over or whatever, you have some time to figure that out in between. Does that make sense? Before your balloon payment and his. Okay. Might even be better to do 3 years or whatever. So we'll just say 4 years on it. And then, so 850 times, I'm going to do this. Well, whatever. Okay, 850 times 12 times 4. This is the 4 years. So he's paying 40,800 more to you guys, to us as the seller. We're getting an additional $40,000 on this deal. And in fact, because even if we sold it at the exact same price, right? Let me show you something too. So hope this is really cool. I like this stuff. I hope I'm not going too deep in the woods, but let's just say, okay, so the interest that they're paying over the 4 years is 131. Now go back to our loan. I should just do like 2 different sheets, actually. That'd be smart. Yeah. That would, oops. Nope, I want a new one. Not bad. Let's do side by side. Okay. So in our loan was what? So it was 530 at, was it 4%? Yeah. 4%, I think. Yes, it was 4. 5-year. Click on it every single time. So just in interest alone, this deal is going to generate over, because look at the interest that we're paying to the seller over the 5 years. And by the way, we're not paying the interest technically. He is the end buyer. We paid it for the first 6 months, but we're getting over 20,000 or 30,000 smackers just on interest alone. So we just added an additional $30,000 to our profit margin. That if we just would have sold this and let's say there wasn't any early payment penalty on there, and we just sold it as is, and we made, for the 700,000, cool. We walk away with a big chunk of cash. But doing it this way over the course of 4 years, we're getting paid an extra 30 grand. Yeah. It's fun because there's so much stuff you can do. Like the limitation is your imagination. I mean, and that's it, honestly, because you could do so many cool stuff with this. I guess there, regulations, but I mean, even then, that's it's so easy just to follow. So yeah, I don't know what questions. I feel like I probably went off on a place where I may have left you guys on an island, but
No, I feel this is good because that answered one of my questions. I'm like, well, wait a minute, what, the original agreement was this, and then but it changed, and how does that work?
mhm,
How does that impact the original seller?
right,
So this example is great. It's, I'm gonna have to watch this again to, wrap my head around it
yeah,
more in depth. But just knowing this, just actually going through an example, knowing it's possible. I mean, yeah,
So
just
like
yeah,
deals like this
great.
is also for an example. Last year we bought a house and it was like I don't remember. It's like 350. It was in an area. I think it was in West Valley or something like that. So maybe no, maybe it was like four. We'll just say 400. It was like 400,000, and the interest rate it was subject to. They had like no equity in their home. They bought it like a year before, but they were going through foreclosure, so they were having a really hard time, right? So they had it at 2.775% interest. The ARV was like 410. There's a no, and it needed about, well, it did need about $10,000 in rehab costs, so it wasn't like in terrible shape, but like, yeah, it was $20,000 above what they were like owing, and like that was it. So what we did, because most people are like, well, you can't, and it didn't make sense for a cash flow perspective as far as rentals in the area. So it didn't make sense on that either because the payments were too high with the taxes and insurance and whatnot. So I was like, okay, what can we do? Because they're about to lose their home. And in fact, this lady, she had a job offer in Texas, and she was trying to get there in time, and but she had this house looming over her. I think she needed a couple grand to do the moving and get out there kind of thing. So she needed some money, but she couldn't even get that some money, and then she had this house that's just there. Um, so what we did was we got her under contract, right? And then and I wholesaled this. I didn't do the whole thing. I just I created my packet or the email blast, and I basically broke it down. This is how this deal. This is the only way that I see this deal can work. I don't think I said only because that's limited, but this is a way that I feel that this deal is amazing. Here's how to do it. And I kind of broke things down in the email so people could see what the heck I was talking about. So if someone, because interest rate is so stinking low, and it wouldn't cash flow normally, right? So then it's like, okay, here's what you do: just buy it at the price that we're selling it, 410. Because I think we only made 10,000. Wasn't like a huge deal by any means. But then sell it on seller financing for 5%. Put in $10,000 in rehab, whatever, ask for down payment, and then you're remaking. What's the difference here? For 600, almost $600 a month in cash flow for the next 28 years or until the person sells or refis. So the cash flow, so the barrier to entry was very little. The down payment was like 20,000 or something like that, like all in, and then they would get a $600 cash flow. And the great thing about this particular strategy is like getting rental for $600 in cash flow is not bad. That's pretty good. right? I think Chris Wilson says that he doesn't look at a rental unless he gets at least $400 cash flow per door. So this is above that mark. But the cool thing is, like, there's a well, I have a HELOC on this house, not a mortgage. But if the roof leaks, you don't get to call your mortgage company and say, "Hey, Mr. Mortgage Guy, the roof's leak. You got to fix it." Like, what are you talking about? Just make the payment. Hey, Mr. Banker. Hey, you know what? These carpets are really ugly. You should replace them. It's your house, dude. We're not replacing. Just make your payment. Hey, Mr. Banker, guess what? The bathroom needs some update. There's a leak there. Just make the payment, dude. We don't care about your leaks. You know, that's the conversation you would have with the bank if you wanted something fixed, right? But a landlord would be a lot different. You'd be like, "Oh, Mr. Landlord, you got to fix this." Oh crap, I guess I have to. So you're in a position of the bank where you're not having to worry about all of that stuff. GI Joe stuck in the toilet, whatever. It's their house. They take care of it. They manage it. You're about to ask something, Jeff, or did you have something?
Yeah.
I saw
You're
it.
watching me want to go off mute.
Uh-huh.
I got a little unclear as far as the rental monthly payment. Before you said it was
Right.
too tight, wouldn't really work, but
Yep.
there's cash flow now once it's put together.
Because the person that's living in the house is not a renter; they're a buyer. Buyer people that live in their house, most I would say on average, at least in this market in Utah, uh, the average mortgage is higher than the rent in that house.
Yeah.
So people, when I'm looking to buy a house, the average Joe, they don't look at what the rents are in that area. They don't care. They're not renting. They're just seeing if they can afford that $3,000 payment because it's their house. They're creating equity. They're building it.
Gotcha. Okay. So the monthly payment is agreed upon ahead of time. It's just whether they can afford it or not. It's not based on mortgage or rents or anything like that.
Well, it's not based on rents, that's for sure. But it's like that's whatever the mortgage
Cool.
calculator says, right? So like what the mortgage calculator says that yeah, you're gonna be paying $2,200, not talking
Right.
about tax and
Gotcha.
insurance.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you.
hmm
Cool.
perfect. Yeah, we went to a whole thing I wasn't expecting, but that's good. I like this is what I really like looking at deals and like, okay, this is a crummy deal, and like I think there's something there. There's something there. I got and I'll start playing with stuff like this, and it's like, okay, yeah, if we get it like this, and then we stand in our heads, this makes sense. You know, it's just a puzzle to solve. That's all it is.
Yeah. Like gosh, I've just been so limited in my thinking of like, hey, this isn't a, obvious, equity, perfect deal, whatever. And this is what people mean when they say like, it's the deal's not found, it's created. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just never understood that, but this is a perfect example of
Yep.
how you figure it out and make it work and play with those numbers. Uh, yeah, this is great. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And that's, I mean, on that scenario, what I was talking about with $600 cash flow, like they had other investors come in and got their property under contract for subject to, but they couldn't make it work. It didn't make sense for them because they had the one tool in their toolbox. That's all they had. Okay, cool. Subject to or like the cash offer. Okay, those are my tools. Oh, it doesn't fit. Okay, we can't help you. Or I got those same. We have those same tools. Like, well, what if here's this other thing we use. What if we combine both these tools and twist it counterclockwise? Oh, it works. Great.
So maybe it sounds like looking for houses with low equity, like on Deal Machine and things, might be another good source of leads. Sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a source of leads, and if you're going for strategies like this, like you want to do some wraparounds and things like that, like yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? You could see what their interest levels for selling is, and then because maybe they just bought it or they're underwater or whatever. Okay, cool. Let's figure this out. But yeah, and it's literally like I'll just start playing with like the payment's too high. Okay, what can I do to lower the payment? To lower the payment, I would need to either lower the interest rate or lower the purchase price or a combination of both. But the seller or like, okay, with the seller, like my purchase price is pretty locked in. If I do anything higher, like I know I'm gonna be screwed because it's gonna be shorter term play. But if I increase the interest rate, it's gonna actually give them more money, and so that's where their end result, or maybe they want more monthly payments. So sometimes it's like you're talking to someone that needs, um, maybe someone that old folks like they're going to transfer to a different, they're selling their home so they can live in old folks home, and you're talking to like their kids and them, and it's like how much do they need a monthly basis to be okay? Like, well, we need 2,500. Like, okay, great. How can I make that payment 2,500 or more? And then so it's whether it's increasing the interest rate or increasing the purchase price. That's how that's how that works, right? So just by literally sitting there and playing with it, and so maybe you don't feel comfortable doing it right in front of people and like trying to figure things out, when especially when you're brand new. Like I get it. A simple like, yeah, I think I have a really good idea how we can help you. I think I can get it to that price range. Let me run some numbers. I'll talk to a partner of mine and we'll figure this out, and then we'll come back with an offer that I think you might actually enjoy, might actually like. And so, yeah, stuff like that. So even if you don't feel comfortable right away, you can just say like, but set an appointment if you're doing that. Always set an appointment. Book it like Michael Huggins. Book a meeting
Bam,
for another
bam.
meeting. Yeah, bam, bam. It's all of the stuff he teaches on marketing is 100% transferable to real estate and vice versa. It's sales. Sales is communication. That's all it is.
So I just want to make sure I understand that at its most basic level, a wraparound is you getting a seller finance deal,
Mhm.
and you selling that seller finance deal for increased rate, interest rate, etc.
Exactly.
So when on the seller finance deal that you buy, um, when the balloon comes due, what typical financing do you do on that one?
So if you own the property and the balloon's coming up, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Like what you
exactly.
do?
Yep. Yep.
Then I call my buddy Josh and say, hey man, I need to refi this thing. What options do we have right now?
Gotcha. Okay. And that's why
The
in
mortgage
your,
broker, if you didn't know, that's why I said that.
and that's why in your specific scenario, I think your balloon was 4 years, and then the one that when you sold that same seller finance, it was 5. So you only have that 1 year difference before you get that money back to repay, let's say Josh, that he loaned you to officially pay off that balloon payment. Is that correct?
Right, right. So I mean, if it's so the end buyer that bought the deal from us,
Right.
they have 4 years to pay it back, and then yeah, and when they pay it back, that's when you pay off yours too.
Got
I
it.
mean, because you have to do that because if they're refining it, they need to have a clean title.
Mhm.
So the seller is going to get whatever, or the original seller is going to get, instead of 5 years, they got 4 years, right? And but we've talked like this is a possibility. It probably will happen. This is what we're looking at. This is what I mean. By then, there's like no early penalty fee. By then, by the fourth year, they've been getting payments for the past 4 years. They're tickle for 4.5 years. Tickle paint, cool, awesome. And then see what kind of options are at that time. Maybe that's just like if it was a house that I just kept and I bought it in seller financing and there was a balloon on it, like I could either sell it, refi it, or whatever. The end seller would and buyer would have the same options.
Sure. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Good questions. Okay.
So if this is your strategy, so like my partner that I'm trying to work with, we have he says I'm really only a solution, for 1% of people. 99% of people don't really want to deal with me. He likes to do things like seller finance and everything. So for if you're mostly looking to find those sorts of houses to wholesale, like you just talked about, finding things with lower equity, what other kind of, if you're using Deal Machine or iOS or whatever, what other kind of, are there any other kind of quick filters you would use besides low equity
Um,
on those? Well, I
Great
guess you would
question.
also want to find high equity or are paid off completely,
Free and
right?
clear.
Duh, because that's
So
who can
free and
do it.
clear, empty nesters is I think that there's a filter for empty
Yep.
deal machine, empty
Yep.
nesters. Yeah, free and clear. Even cash buyers kind of there's some that they bought it in cash. So they may have, maybe they want to cash out or who knows, right? They would have potential of doing something like this, right?
Awesome.
Notice of default is still a good option because you can do this on a subject to for most loans, right?
Right.
With FHA and some other it's a lot more challenging to you can buy it to do it in trust and whole other thing, which I'm not going to get into right now. But to wrap it becomes a lot harder to do
Okay.
without getting the notice without getting the loan call due, right?
You
So
said FHA, right?
FHA, yep,
Okay.
yeah. So like for example, here Utah housing loans, like they are notorious for knocking on the door, making sure that whoever owns the loan is living there, and so yeah, like I can do flips with Utah housing loans. There's certain things I can do, but like wraparounds, like that's not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Okay. That's super helpful. Thank you.
And so a question we need to ask the sellers is if there's a loan or any liens on the property. So we need to know that ahead of time to even go
Yes,
down the conversation of seller financing, right?
exactly.
Yeah. And
It,
then what's the good question that you use to start the seller financing conversation to see if that's a possibility?
um, well, once we've already established their pain points and their pleasure, or what they're running away from, and what they're running away towards, what they want to accomplish, what they don't want to happen. Once we establish that, then I will give them my cash offer. But again, I sandwich it between their pain points, like we talked about before. Um, and and I know it's gonna be low, so they may not even like it, right? Sometimes I'll even say it, like depending on our conversation, like my cash offers is it. They're saying they need and it doesn't fit. Sometimes that's the case. So or maybe it's but the great thing about giving your cash offer first, it anchors them into a lower price point,
Right.
right? So that's very, very powerful and very, very good to use. So you're anchoring them at a lower price point. And uh, then offering like starting the conversation. It's like so. It's kind of what I said before. It depends on what their pain point was. So it's like one thing you can say is, for example, is like, so I know my cash offer is 400,000. You were looking at trying to get 500,000. Uh, I think there might be a way where I can actually get you closer to 600. Would you be open to that type of conversation? And
Okay.
they're like, well, wait, yours cash out was 4, now you're offering 6. They're like, what? Like pattern around, whatever they were thinking. There's this kind of like, what the heck? And then it's like, well, yeah, of course, yeah. If you give me 600, then give me 600. That's what I want. Okay, awesome. This is how it works. So we would buy the property, and I would make payments to you. And you know what? The thing is, like, I don't have the 600,000 or 500,000 in my back pocket. And so I would have to get some sort of loan, whether it's bringing a big investor or going to a bank and getting financing for it. So no matter what, I'm paying interest. And so doing it this way, I can actually I'd rather pay you the interest than just some big banker guy. And so what I would do is we buy the property at this price, and then I make payments to you, and because you're charging me interest, over the next 10 years, I'm actually going to be paying you over $600,000 for this property. So that's something that that's a pretty go-to pitch.
Right.
If
Right.
it's like an investment property or a property they don't live in, sometimes, and if one of the concerns is the tax, again, it really depends on what their pain point is. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes I'll say, like, do you want to pay a lot of taxes or little taxes? And they're like, well, little taxes, but what do you mean?
Okay.
And then I'll say, like, well, I I know when I've sold properties, investment properties, I had to pay those darn capital gains taxes. It's crazy. And when I sold properties and get a big chunk of cash, it puts me in the highest tax bracket. So I'm paying more taxes on my highest on that part that's in the highest tax bracket. When we buy a property, or when you're getting money from when someone's buying a property from you and they're doing it in payments, you're only paying taxes on the money you received that year, not on the entire sale of the property. So you're only being taxed on that 20,000 plus the other 10,000 payments I made in that current year, instead of getting taxed of 400,000.
Yeah.
Another thing is, like, would you be open if I ended up paying your taxes? So that is like, we're buying this property, how much taxes, and I'll ask them, like, at that point, like, they know how much taxes they're going to have to pay on it. Like, so how much taxes would you have to pay if you bought the house you're looking at? What would be your tax burden? Do you have any idea? And there's a 40,000 or whatever, 100,000. Cool, awesome. Here's what we're gonna do. This is how this works out. Where I can pay your taxes. We're gonna buy the property, and I'm gonna do it in payments. And because you're gonna charge me this 4% interest over the course of the next 4 years, I'm actually paying well over the $100,000 which you're paying in taxes. It's me effectively paying you or reimbursing you for your taxes if you want. Same thing as like, or if they're gonna go to like an apartment, would it be okay if I effectively, and I say effectively, right? Because it's pay your rent for the next year. Would that be something you'd be interested in? Well, what are you talking? Well, yes, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, pay my rent. Awesome. This is how we're gonna do it. So how much would the rent gonna be? 2,000. Okay, so if I buy your place, the price we talked about, but I'm gonna do it in payments, and so the payments are gonna be X amount, which is gonna be even more than your rent. So I'm gonna pay for your rent and groceries. So I'm not actually paying for the rent and groceries, but I'm like, I put it in context where for them it makes, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I hate paying rent. It freaking sucks. They're still paying rent. I'm just paying them to do what they want with the money.
Yeah, cool. And a quick clarification on the numbers. The offer, what you offer initially, is different from how much they actually make, because the interest isn't part of the offer, like the purchase price. Right. I mean,
mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
And you show them, like, this is the offer, but what you're actually going to make over this time is this. So, yes. Okay, making sure. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, they're not thinking the offer is going to be the 600,000 when I'm buying it at 400, right? Because then they'll look at the contract like, wait a minute, this number's different. And show me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But that's a good clarification, because if people didn't get that, then yeah, they need to. Yeah.
It seems like such an easy concept to understand, but then when you try and implement it on a deal when you're by yourself, it seems so complicated.
Just call Jared. That's when you call Jared.
Yeah, right. I know. That's what I was thinking.
And the thing is, like, and please do, right? And the thing is, like, it's okay to not know every single detail. Like, they want to make sure you know what you're talking about, obviously. Yeah, you can't go Samuel old man, right, when it comes down to the fine details and competence. But it's okay to be like, I think if we do it this way, or maybe you're not explaining, because there's so many times I can tell you, like, I've had conversations with sellers and I did not explain things very well, or I didn't do it in a way where they understood it very well. Like, it just kind of, I went too fast or whatever. And then I apologized, and like, you know what? I need to apologize to you. I don't think I explained that very well. That was my fault. Let me start over. So what part did you get so far? What have we talked about? And so I can fill in the holes where it's at. And so you're putting the blame if they don't quite understand it, or you get the feeling like, that's on me. I'm sorry. That's my bad. Do you understand this concept? Can you maybe tell me about it, so we're make sure we're on the same page? Things like that. Oh, it's 12:08. Okay, well, all right. It's so much fun when I'm like I can just sit down, and this is one of my not challenge. Sometimes I'll spend too much time on analyzing the deal because of these small little things, like me. Oh, what if I do this? But it's like it's fun. I get too many dopamine hits for it. But awesome, guys. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope that was helpful. Going over a bunch of seller financing stuff, and so
very much so. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all. Don't miss tomorrow. Tomorrow and be on time. Dave Hernandez is coming on. Please be on time. Come early if anything. I don't want him to be jumping on Zoom and there's like 2 people on. Like, oh yeah, thanks for coming, Dave. Great. Okay, awesome. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.